The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon to everybody listening from across the globe, UK and India, or wherever you're listening to this UK IBC webinar. For those of you in the UK and in India, I hope you had an enjoyable long weekend. A warm welcome to this UK IBC webinar in partnership with M&V, looking at how to effectively manage performance and productivity of both your staff and suppliers during lockdown in the current situation. My name is Chris Hayes. I'm one of the directors here at UK IBC. And first and foremost, I hope that you are all safe, and the same can be said for your families during this unprecedented time. This webinar is one of a number of webinars that UK IBC have been doing to ensure that our networks are kept up to date as possible with key issues and from business and governments are facing in the UK and India. So far we've covered topics including protecting your IP, the importance of data during lockdown, and we have also looked at FICCI's research into the impact of COVID-19 in India and what that will have in terms of the short term and the medium term. These recordings, along with our blogs and reports, are all available for free to download on our new dedicated COVID-19 microsite, which you can find on our website, ukibc.com. Our next event is going to be taking place on the 3rd of June, and we'll look at the future of work in India. And you will receive a link in this follow-up email from the team so that you are able to sign up if you haven't already done so. To keep up to date with all our events and developments, feel free to follow us on Twitter. You can see the hashtag is on your screen at UKIBC. You can also see that M&V's Twitter feed is there at MNV_group. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. And if you wish to receive our monthly newsletters, feel free to sign up on our website. Before we start, some housekeeping. You will all automatically be placed on mute. You will notice though on the right hand side of your screen there is a questions section, so feel free at any time during the presentations to put in your questions there, and then I can put these to the panelists at the end of the session. You will also be glad to know that we are recording this session, which will then be placed on our website, and the link will be emailed over to you in case there are any sections that you wanted to re-listen to or watch, or if you want to share that with your colleagues or your networks. We have three great panelists for you today, and I'm delighted to first introduce to you Deepmala Datta, who will look at staff performance and productivity during lockdown. Deepmala began her career in talent acquisition, progressing to learning and development, and finally gaining expertise in organizational development. Since joining M&V in 2012, she has worked on a variety of international companies to structure their subsidiary organizations, diagnostics, and also has assisted in the design and execution of strategic interventions. Deepmala is a Gallup certified engagement champion, a certified personality and preference index assessor, and a postgraduate in HR and IR from XLRI. So Deepmala, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I'm discussing two very critical topics, and these are the topics that are amongst the top topics that we do work around, and it's performance and productivity. Today, I'll be approaching these two topics from a standpoint of how I created a derivative construct and conceptualize it for times to come now. So let's look at what really performance looks like. So moving to this slide, you would see that I've put some performance enablers. And so when I do work, I try creating distinctions between both performance and productivity. Performance being more individual or clusters of individuals together, and productivity is slightly more wider, and it encompasses the organizations and aspects of organizations. So when I look at what enables performance, there are three things that I've kind of put together for our discussion today. This is about right fitment. So individual performance really gets impacted a whole lot with if there is a misfit, and it only just gets exemplified if there is a manager role we are talking about. in the current realities of do with whatever available talent we have, and we're not hiring, so until we hire, let's make do with what's available. What I have seen teams have started doing is reassessing the competence required or reestablishing role expectations to meet the incumbent skills. The future of work is only going to be more agile, collaborative, and exploratory in nature because it's pretty uncertain. We don't know how it would be. So the kind of competence that would become critical for hiring in the future, and of course my colleague is going to be talking a lot about it, is going to be hiring traits such as composure, optimism, and resilience. These are the three traits that I feel if we were to have it, your chances of right fitments are going to be there. We've spoken a lot about clarity of goals, what is expected out of me. When there is no clarity, teams usually have wrong priorities. They will be focusing on different goals, and it leads to negative impact on performance and thus productivity. Just by bringing more clarity in, you will see that a 5 to 10% increase in productivity automatically happens if the goals are clearly written or explicitly spoken about. COVID, like if I look at times now, the experience that I see is there's far more clarity and alignment now. I mean, everybody that I've spoken to is talking about uncertainty, is talking about when the business will open up. And naturally, all of them are gearing up to pick up projects that will improve their resilience when the business opens up, or will give them a competitive advantage in terms of cost or efficiency. So automatically there's a clarity. What would be a wonder to see would be how do we sustain? How does India as a team sustain this to reap the benefits? The third aspect that I've seen is about review and continuous conversations. That how do you review or target leads to performance. Performance management systems historically have always been under a debate, be it pandemic or no pandemic. They were always under a scanner. They were looked at backward looking. They were not forward or future oriented. They also had a bit of disengagement already built in because they were perceived as judgmental. Organizations before pandemic had already started revisiting their performance management systems and talking about continuous conversations. I think the beauty about all of us coming in the same situation is the fact that managers have intuitively started engaging a lot with teams. They're engaging with compassion and empathy and talking about narratives rather than the target, which automatically is the movement towards continuous conversation. To reap the true benefit of times like this and future, when we do open up, it makes sense to look at continuous conversations and revisit performance management. In the same breath, now I would like to talk about productivity. My next slide, I move on to the next slide to tell you about productivity, the aspects that are enabling productivity now. When I look at it, there are about two things. It is about getting your access to tools. And what I mean by is not machine tools. It's not about quality tools or Kaizen tools. It's about information. It's about technology. It's about procedures. It's about how is organization making these available for the employees and reviewing the use of these. It is that focus that's put around this that increases productivity. Because productivity in the true sense is really not the ratio of output to input. It's more interplays between quality, effectiveness, innovation, technology, even work-life balance, and profitability. A summation of this is productivity, which means the performance that an individual brings to the table as well. Gallup has invariably, over so many years of research, have proven to the point that engagement or high engagement leads to high business performance. And engagement is not necessarily only to be controlled by the human resource team or enterprise level. Engagement happens at a managerial level. What an enterprise does or an HR does is create a culture or create intervention and culture that helps manager and sustain the manager level engagement. It also involves the role of manager, and it says that the manager role has become more deepened, and time just proves the facts now. Managers today have started showing, like I mentioned earlier, empathy and compassion, and these have become the cornerstone of engagement. If I was to give an advice to companies here who are listening to me today, my advice would be around areas: how do you sustain this? How do you build managers' responsibility towards creating engagement? A proven fact is engagement has about 30% impact on your productivity. And with attrition rates high, this is definitely something everybody needs to look at. From a productivity standpoint, I also feel that we have traditionally been talking about reviews, and reviews, in my head, in my observation, opinions, become more point in time. Of course, we review a period, but it's also in a point in time. It happens usually at the conclusion of your financial year. But I would insist that organizations start looking at monitoring which is more real time, which is more data oriented, focused on getting it's like monitoring your sales funnel versus reviewing your sales targets. And in times like this, monitoring takes the precedence over reviews. I'm not trying to say that reviews are not important, but times like this just brings the precedence over. So these are the two concepts I spoke about, and I've worked around and built this construct for myself. So when I look at, and in my next slide, you would see that I talk about what can companies do. So what actions can organizations take? Now, my specific 4 pointers is towards companies who have subsidiaries in India. And there are 4 aspects that I've seen that have made or actually help organizations become more productive and they have great business performance. In all the work that I've done in the last 8 years of working with companies, I've seen that assuming that the product has been designed for the Indian market, the price has been right, and enough marketing price has been taken, there are only 2 reasons why subsidiaries in India struggle, and that is primarily people and processes. Process is about how is the cash flow management of the process, how rigorously is the process followed, monitored, reviewed, and spoken about, versus people. And we spoke about enablers of people. Looking at these 2 things, the 4 things at a headquarter level and at a head office level in a subsidiary can do is build the bridge between the 2. And this is where the head office takes a lot of importance, and the actions need to be more precise and understanding and how different is the Indian subsidiary from us, what actions do we need to do. Beauty of pandemic, and I'm going to be short in the head like I always say, it has brought us on a common or a level playing field. We have a common understanding of what the business is happening, where are we coming from, what are our uncertainties. Each one of us intuitively has tuned in. So it just becomes more easier. And what head office can do now is to be more compassionate, more considerate when it comes to talking about the people cost. That's something that everybody is looking at. How do we bring the costs down? My advisory would be do what is there. Of course, that needs to be done, but with compassion and consideration. Whatever actions we take now will have an impact on how employees are going to look and stay with us for the next 2 or 3 years. So what companies are really doing is re-looking at what is the medical support they're providing to the families and parents. That kind of a managerial support is building the trust and loyalty. So that's something that we can look at, looking at cultures. Of course, it has been said India is a long-term plan. It's not your short-term. If you're going to do business here, please get your suitcase and stay here. It is a long-term view, and I will not dwell more on it. Connection and communication are too critical. We as individuals love talking. We love building that connect and engaging and talking personal life. That's who we are. So if you were to leverage this, if your HR or headquarters can use this tool more frequently, more consistently, there are huge benefits to be reaped. Communications will become better, clarity is there, and also head office gets a view into the Indian team. So building that bit is about just listening and what is that we can do, talking to them. Co-evolving programs will become critical now. We all started working from home, and if I was to go by the research that has happened, use of technology has increased almost 3-fold. Technology, of course, is going to be our next lever for the future. Work is going to be driven only on technology. But managers is also a section that I want to lay emphasis on. Their capabilities will actually decide which destinations would the teams reach on. So now is the time to build on the capabilities, and the capabilities will have to be around risk taking ability, will have to be around agility, will have to be around tech savviness. Because a lot of our managers are still from the old school of thought of doing things by hand. So now helping them transition into a more collaborative, more technology world will be the action. I want to use my next slide as an example to tell you why technology is my favorite, but there's a lot that goes behind the technology. This is some research that was done to see that performance, and I'm using performance management systems as an example, that if there was technology or systems being used, how do companies perceive the effectiveness? Organizations with smaller number of employees did feel that performance management systems, and if backed by technology, definitely are more effective. They score them at a 3.43 on a scale of 4. Whereas this number does reduce when the organization size increases. Now I understand this may not be a descriptive of the pool that is tuned in today for the webinar, but the idea is not the numbers, the idea is the message behind it. That once the employees, organizations are of smaller size, effectiveness is perceived higher, and the rationale being because performance management system in India is really individual driven. You have individual goals. We haven't transitioned to a collective goal sharing or collaborative work environment. That is what happens when the teams become larger and the control on the outcomes is more collective. You see the effectiveness drop. So what does this teach us? That technology will do only as much as we want it to do. So what will become more important is to look at what is the purpose we would want the technology for. For example, would my performance management system still become individual KRAs or goals, or will it be collective team goals? Do I want ordinance and governance on the systems more? Vis-a-vis, do I want development more? Would I want to use my Indian talent pool and use the mobility that it brings to me more effectively, or do I want it just to be more lateral or vertical in space? All of these questions will help you decide by what technology to use. And there's enough. There are many. There are Oracles, SAPs, homegrown systems. All of them serve the purpose. It's only just that we need to know the purpose. I'm just going to use a very quick example to conclude this. I was doing some work with an organization, and they had a lot of very advanced tools. They had AI in their predictive recruitment methods. They also had chatbots to help the HR execution. They had, and of course, finance and supply chain. They had chatbots. A lot of investment being done. But it had absolutely no correlation to productivity because all of them were just sitting standalone. There was no intelligence being created between the systems to make business decisions. So I am pro technology, and I would say yes technology, but also goes hand in hand on what purpose would the technology serve for us. Yeah, so on that note, I've kind of concluded my 2 topics, and yeah, thank you so much, and I look forward to if there are any questions for me. Thank you.
Thanks,
Over to you, Chris.
That was an extremely interesting overview. I think the things that I took from that was very much about clarity, which I think is extremely important, and those continuous conversations. You know, I have conversations on a daily basis now with my teams, and very much I can see that, you know, continuing post lockdown. So some good has come out of this. Next, it's my great pleasure to introduce one of our fellow directors, Rohit Singh. Rohit will look at the management and performance productivity of contractors and suppliers. So slightly different topic, but something that is incredibly important at the moment. Rohit heads up the UK IBC's market entry and research teams, and he's also leading on our dedicated COVID-19 support service. Rohit has hands-on experience in India regulatory environments and corporate affairs, and has been instrumental in setting up factories, establishing business startups, and managing business transitions from the US and the UK into India. So thank you very much, Rohit, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure and honor today to talk on the topic managing partners and suppliers in this uncertain time. Uh, as Chris mentioned, I have a responsibility of the India Advisory Services, and in the next few minutes, I'll be taking you through to how important is managing this partner suppliers in this time. My co-speaker Deepmala has talked about the importance of the performance and productivity of the staff, but how that's going to make a difference when it comes to the managing the partner supplier. May I request to go to the next slide? I have few talking points over there. Yeah. So that's what I'm planning to cover today, and then I'll also talk a little bit on what kind of risk your partner suppliers are facing today, and how you can ensure and how you can get more investigation on the health check or the supplier side. And finally, what are your options to essentially mitigate some of those risks and manage the partner suppliers? Now, the most important thing is when you talk about your own business and staff, then those business and staff, they are in your the direct control. But when you have to deal with your partner and suppliers, mostly that's contractual. That relationship is contractual in nature. That means you have a limited the managerial influence on the activities and the operations of your suppliers. You don't have a direct visibility on their business health and also their staff well-being. But because these are critical part of your supply chain, anything which happens to your partner suppliers are going to impact the operation and running of your business. That's why it is important to be aware of the challenges and risks your partner suppliers are facing, and any consequences which may lead for your business, and how you can deal with those challenges. And if you look at what risks your partner suppliers are facing, there can be many risks. Some of these could be, they may be facing with the cancellation or delay of their customer orders. They might be going through a high debt obligation or a payment collection issues, or might be dealing with a high fixed recurring cost of real estate, overhead, staff salaries, and all. They may have stuck inventory cost. They might have, the lack of infrastructure or money to, they run operations under this social distancing norms, which is now going to be very much important these days. And ultimately, these are going to lead to the cash or liquidity problem to your suppliers and the partners. And the first, the category of the expenses which gets a hit is the salary cuts or the furloughs or the staff layoff. And that's going to have a direct consequence to you. You may lose some of your key talents, which are important at your partner's business for your business delivery. And most importantly, you might lose on the capability and the capacity of your partner to deliver on your future business commitments. In some cases, we have also seen that the supplier partner may ask you for some credit or the advance to meet their the fixed expenses or the staff salaries. Now, it is for you to take a the timely action on that, and investigate what's going on at your suppliers the business, because those things are not in your direct control. And in this scenario, what kind of questions you should ask, what kind of questions you should investigate. Some of the investigation you can do on your own, and for some of the investigation you might need some experts on the ground help. But ultimately, those things are important for you. For instance, you should be investigating that what is the extent of this COVID-19 impact on your India partners' business, and how is their financial health, and will they be able to survive this crisis in a long run? Are they going for salary cuts or a job cut? Are they losing on customers? How their own supply chain is doing and performing? And is this going to have a serious impact on their ability to deliver on your future business commitments? The government of India has also come out with the economic reforms package. So you also need to investigate whether your suppliers partners are covered under grants or the credit schemes announced by the government. Are there any red flags you should be aware of? And if your partner is prepared to deal with this crisis, I think you're quite in a safe place. But you need to know answer of these questions in order to manage your suppliers and take a timely actions. So the question comes that, if you know answers to these questions, then what are your options? What you can do, or what steps you can take to mitigate some of those risks. The first and foremost, I would say that you need to communicate more, and that too very frequently, and if possible, try to have a direct conversation with your partners, the staff as well, because sometimes you get to know some of the things which you may not come to know by talking to the promoters directly, because in some cases you may have a full-time the employees of your suppliers, they're working for you. So it's good to communicate the frequently, and try to understand what's going on. And in many cases you might need to review your existing terms of trade also, and you need to look into that, whether your existing agreement with your partner supplier, do they protect your business from this crisis? Do you have the force majeure, or the doctrine of frustration clauses and those things in place? You might need to think of the renegotiating your partnership agreement if your supplier is coming to you, if your partner is coming to you for any financial damage in the short term, due to this crisis. So you have to see that what clauses you can renegotiate on that. Technology and the digital route is again going to be a mantra these days. So you have to see that if your products are not available through online, the route in India, so it's a time to explore, whether through e-commerce platform, through marketplaces like Amazon, Flipkart, you can put those things in place. And it's no brainer that if you feel that there are some emerging red flag or the orange flag, start identifying the alternate partners in India who are more financially sustainable and capable in delivering to your business commitment in this the crisis time, and once this crisis is over. Also, another important thing is, sometimes you find that because there are some staff at your supplier's end who are full-time working for you on an exclusive contract, then coming out of a relationship with the partner or supplier may also tend you to lose those important staff. Or if in case there is a layoff, or the attrition happening at the partner's end, then you may lose those staff. In those cases, as an interim arrangement, you will also have an option to have those staff on third-party payroll as an interim last resort, the option for you. That way, you can still retain those talent for your business. Once the situation will normalize. So I would say that there are a lot of ways you can manage your suppliers, and you can evaluate what's going on. And in the extreme cases, you might think that things are not moving. I might need to go for a litigation route. You always have that option to do that, but my suggestion would be that in the current scenario, and otherwise also, go on the litigation route at the very last option, when nothing is working out. And I say normally that you should litigate rarely, but you should negotiate mostly, but settle always. And that's a line which I always recommend to the companies when they are dealing with their the suppliers. In this current time, we have, as Chris mentioned, we have also launched the COVID diagnostic support for the businesses. So there are a lot of detailing in all those the options, and we'll be happy to discuss more on that for a free diagnostic consultation, and happy to answer your further questions. With that, I'll end my presentation here. Thank you so much to listening to me. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Rohit. I think that was another interesting presentation. I think the key takeaway from me there is all about analysing your risk and ensuring that you are having those frequent communications. And I think that's a topic that will continue to come up today. Communications with your suppliers, with your partners. Interesting, you picked up on the force majeure issue, which I know is currently being discussed a lot in India. So With that, I think we'll move on to the next presentation. But just before we do, just a quick reminder to everybody, please keep those questions coming in. Looking forward to putting all your questions towards the panelists at the end of the next presentation. So now, last but certainly not least, is Samriti Prashar, who will be looking at recruiting and retaining employees during the lockdown. With over 18 years experience in executive search and HR consulting in both Indonesia and India, Samriti has accumulated a wide range of management knowledge. Since joining M&V in 2015, Samriti has recruited an amazing 200 CXOs for international clients and supported many companies with structuring their sales teams and benchmarking salaries for positions effectively. She has also managed M&V's internal hiring and has done so and enabled them to reduce their attrition rate to 2% by introducing quality-driven recruitment processes. So Samriti, over to you for the final presentation.
Thanks, Chris, for handing over to me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, for all our listeners today, I sincerely pray and hope for your well-being and safety in these unprecedented times. I was asked to prepare myself to talk about the change in the recruitment processes and how we retain employees during the lockdown. But then I thought before we do that, I should probably start by describing the impact of lockdown on different industries and how moving forward India is gearing up to be on a growth path. Can we change the slide, please? Yes. Some of the industries doing good in the lockdown period are healthcare and life sciences, both in terms of the next slide, please. Yes. So some of the industries which are doing good during this time is healthcare and life sciences for obvious reasons, both in terms of OTC and the medical devices, especially the companies producing sanitizers, masks, and PPE kits. Their business have grown manifold. I remember this European company who was making a sanitizer last year was filing a deficit in the revenue, and this year they have already achieved their target for the full year in just the first quarter. The requests for sanitizers grew so much that they had to employ 40 more fresh employees to join them from quarter 2. Amazing. See how things have become so unpredictable. Technology, of course, how can we not talk about it? The whole world today is surviving on technology and artificial intelligence. A lot of user-friendly products like Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams have seen a big growth in the number of users, since most of us are relying on the video conferences to keep in touch with our colleagues and the clients. E-commerce in the later part of the lockdown, when the government allowed the movement of delivery, people came as a saving grace for the consumers when people could not go out to buy the basic essentials and had to follow social distancing. On the other hand, if we see the number of industries which were hit during the lockdown were much, much more, which also brought about fall in the GDP of India to mere 1.3%. The unemployment rate in India was 7% in January this year, which grew to 23% in April and is estimated to dip further to 52% in the coming months. Zomato has asked 13% of their employees to look for new jobs. Swiggy has asked their 1,100 employees to submit their resignation. And mind you, these are the companies which were hit only for the initial lockdown. They resumed operations in the beginning of this month and came back in the game in a much bigger way. Around 30 to 40% of the 250 startups and the MSMEs have either temporarily halted their operations or have closed down. Aviation and hospitality industries were in deep problems and no flights taking off from last 60 days. With the millions of blue-collared employees leaving for their villages, the work at the construction sites, the energy projects, and the manufacturing plants have come to a complete halt with a big uncertainty on when these people will resume work. Many are speculating to be able to start only after the rainy season, which falls in September or October. Next slide, please. Since 2014 until I guess 2018, India has always fallen into the GDP bracket of around 6 to 7%. But in 2019, demonetization and the long procedure of the GST implementation reduced the GDP of India to mere 4.5%. And now, as you can see, India is preparing to bounce back. Next slide, please. With IMF predicting India's growth rate could top 7.4% in 2021, provided the coronavirus outbreak is brought under control, which we see that India has been successful in containing compared to the other countries in the world. Secondly, to inject more stimulus into the economy, both in monetary and fiscal terms, which anyways, India is very well equipped with its reserves so far. It is also said that the low oil price is also going to give a boost to the Indian economy. Interestingly, the unpleasantness towards China, because of being the catalyst in spreading the deadly virus into the world, has also acted as a blessing in disguise for us. India looks to attract more than 1,000 American companies. Medical devices giant Abbott Laboratories and Medtronic PLC, German footwear manufacturer Von Wellix, has already started taking measures to relocate from China to India. Many auto part makers in India, the OEM manufacturers, has received several inquiries from companies who has operations in China but now want to allocate their supply chain to India. The raw material which India used to import from China earlier, now under the Independent India Mission, we have started taking measures to manufacture them within India. There are a lot of measures being taken to ease down doing business in India. There are many measures taken by government in terms of changing labor laws and relaxing few policies to attract the foreign investments in these coming days. Next slide, please. So before we get into explaining the changes in the ways we are recruiting during lockdown, I must say that we are only talking here about the recruitment of the senior management and the white collar employees. The present scenario has brought about a major shift in the landscape of the talent pool. More than ever, the candidates who earlier were not keen in making a change, professionals who were not directly in the job market, are now showing interest and are available to speak to us about the new job opportunities, which is a good news for the consultants like us, which means that we have now a bigger talent pool to choose from, which means that more screening tools to be used to accommodate screening bigger pools of talent, which also means that we have to do away with the conventional ways of hiring and make the new technology-driven hiring systems as a new norm. The change which came in with working from home, that now at least till August, September, most of the hirings would be done to run business from remote. The top 3 traits to look for in the candidates at this time is if they are trustworthy enough, autonomous, and driven by self-development besides the hard skills required for the job. Now, soft skills are becoming more important than ever before. When it comes to video interviewing, tools like Hinterview, Spark Hire, or Launchpad are some of the tools provide a very comprehensive solution to watch all your candidates on video at the same time, answering your predefined questions. The tools even use artificial intelligence to analyze the way candidates speak to predict future performance in a specific role. We can ask the final shortlisted candidates to fall into the group discussions and present PPTs to define maybe their plans on restructuring the business and the strategy to optimize the available systems in the first 6 months of joining the organization. Like in older days, if you remember, the seniors used to meet the prospect employees socially so that they can understand the body language and the way he behaves in the crowd. This gives them some understanding about the character and the nature of the person. But now, when meeting them physically is not possible in most cases, more emphasis should be given on the screening tools of the assessment centers and the psychometric behavioral tests like METAL and CRISTAL, to name a few, which assesses someone's personality based on the way they behave online. Last but not the least, especially in India, if we talk about, it is very important to speak to the previous employers of the selected candidates to understand how the person had performed earlier. How was he as a team leader? Did he take right measures at the right time to optimize the business process? Make sure that you are not making a mistake. Next slide, please. With this, we come to the last slide of my presentation, which takes us to the retention of the employees in these unprecedented times. With the outbreak, suddenly the whole world is asked to work from home. Before understanding how to retain the employees, one must make an effort to realize the psychology of these employees who were suddenly been asked to work from home. They are feeling insecure, confused, have anxiety, and are apprehensive about the future. The work is affected because no one had planned on these lines to develop the systems to support work from home. In the given situation, how do you make them comfortable? So few measures, like first and foremost, proper work from home policy should be made, which will clear a lot of confusion as to what the management is expecting from them. Because we are not meeting each other physically every day, where we discuss the business processes and take measures to improvise, it becomes more important while working from home to have firm timelines for the projects. I always recommend to have instant rewards and punishments. Employees should know firmly what is acceptable and not acceptable by the management before others follow suit. HR should engage with them in the online team building activities and the mind simulation games. Employees should be encouraged to keep speaking to their colleagues and managers regularly. Remember, it is a fact that human resource is the most important asset which can define the success or failure of the organization. If we have hired the right quality of employees which fits the culture and value of the organization and are successful in keeping their integrity aligned, more than half the battle is won anyways. On this note, I come to an end of my presentation. I would be happy to answer your questions if any. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Samriti. Again, another insightful presentation where communication seems to be the key, and obviously ensuring that your staff understands that clear code of conduct, and I'm sure that being their procedures and their policies during this time. So thanks very much for that. Just a reminder, obviously, please keep your questions coming through. There are a number of questions that I have, which I'll get to in a second, but just a couple of questions as the sort of chair's prerogative from me to start with. Samriti, you were talking then about the recruitment, and given the uncertainty in the markets at the moment, are you seeing a slowdown in companies that are willing to recruit new talents?
Chris, on the contrary, I would say, if I go with my own experience, we have in the last quarter we have seen the most number of mandates compared to any of the years so far, and that amazes me too. I mean, how come in these uncertainty, this kind of uncertainty and unprecedented time, people are still having confidence in India? But this is the truth. In the month of March, April, and May, we have received the most mandates for hiring the MDs and the country heads of the company in India and for their operations in India. And that really amazes me. So if I say slow down, yes, there might be slowdown in few sectors which are not doing well, like let's say the manufacturing plants, let's say the construction sites. But other than that, if we see the foreign companies coming into India with the background of having their own sales business or understanding the market potential of India, they still have not lost confidence in us, and they're coming as usual.
Fantastic, thank you so much for that. I think all three of you sort of touched a little bit on technology, but just to sort of go a little bit deeper into that, how is technology doing its part in helping companies in terms of performance management? So Deepmala, maybe we start with you, and maybe the other panelists might want to jump in after that.
So I think technology overall, Chris, has become more prevalent now. And by virtue of the fact that COVID is going to make us work from anywhere now, the use of technology is going to just go up. Performance management was one of the early few aspects of HR that adopted technology. And it was more so from the humongous task of just paperwork that goes into building that. So, of course, there's an ease of process, it's quickness, the data is available. There are improvements and they will be mild before we use that information predictively. I mean, can our system currently throw up a predictive analysis of your talent, where it is sitting and how does it impact mobility? Is there a segmentation being done? That currently is off technology. I mean, so 80% of our technological tools are helping us ease in the process of performance management, but not necessarily equipping us in better decision making.
Fantastic.
Would that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Samriti, Rohit, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can talk from a partner supplier standpoint. I think yes, technology indeed, the help in these scenarios. The simplest and the easiest are the communication tools. How you can have a regular and the frequent communication with your suppliers and the partners in India. But most importantly, the companies who are having their ERP packages, and if they have a vendor management systems in place, so they can have a better visibility and the better planning with their partner suppliers in this critical time, to probably do some the joint forecast of the future orders and future requirements. It may also help in having a more accuracy in their planning, maybe possibly shorten any new product development or product introduction, the cycle in the India market, and can obviously help in reducing inventories and the other related costs. So I would say certainly the technology in a different form when it comes to the partner suppliers, it certainly helps in the uncertain time.
Fantastic. Samriti, anything from you?
Yes, Chris. I would like to take a very practical view on this as far as recruitment is concerned. I also covered this part in my presentation. So recruitment, basically, the last process of recruitment is that the employer always would like to meet the candidate before asking them to come on board. But during these times when most of our clients are in Europe, in US, in UK, they, of course, would not be able to come down to India at least till the beginning of next year. Then what happens to, hiring these candidates? Now, at this time, technology is the only thing which comes to our support. I mean, we could not have thought of any other, tool. Now, so meeting the candidates basically make them more confident about that they are hiring the right character, the right person who shares the same values as them. The body language is such that they feel that it would be helpful for the business. He would be able to convince the customers and all. But how do we alternate meeting face-to-face to technology-driven tools? Now, there are a lot of assessment centers and psychometric behavioral tests online, which not only helps us in understanding the behavioral traits of the person, but these are customized tests wherein we also come to know that if he's a salesperson, what kind of a sales strategy he's using, and what is the market norm, and then they assess the personality of a person based on that. So these kind of tools are actually coming on a lot of help for us, so to finish the position or accomplish the position in time.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. We've got a question here from Faraz, who's asking, Samriti, you've obviously in your presentation there mentioned quite a strong Indian economy growth in 2021. Just wanted to sort of get the panelists' view really on their thinking on that. Do we believe it will be 7% growth next year, and what's the sort of evidence that's sort of driving that thought process?
So even though IMF has predicted the growth, to tell you the truth, from 1.3% today to 7.4% next year looks quite steep. There are lots of ifs and buts. Even IMF has predicted that if coronavirus is contained in the right time and there are other things which are followed in time, maybe India can look forward to these things. But what I really believe in is how it turned out to be blessing in disguise for us, for India. I mean, companies getting demotivated to work in China, and as a repercussion, those companies are investing into India, relocating themselves into India. And this, I believe, will get a lot of FDI for us, and economy might get a boom from this sector. I hope I was able to answer Faraz nicely.
Yeah, Rohit, anything that you want to add on that?
Just I would like to add that it's quite a evolving, the time at this point of time, and even all the rating agencies, they are keep on changing the projections, not just for the India but for the other countries globally as well. So, so it's difficult to put a number on that, but I would say that unlike this year, 2021 will be certainly a growing trajectory as far as the GDP growth is concerned. But what number it would be? Is that going to be more than 5% or under 5%? I think we need to wait for a quarter or two more to see, how the things progress.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And I think to come back to Samriti's point about the current narrative around China, and obviously lots of businesses looking to move their manufacturing sites, and sort of the new buzzword at the moment is obviously around de-risking your supply chain. I think there was an interesting blog that we did at UK IBC looking at how that could be a double-edged sword. However, for India, with obviously a large proportion of business process outsourcing done in India, and how organizations might look to de-risk some of that leverage. Rohit, just one question from you to you. Sorry, we're obviously seeing a lot of companies who are coming to us now who are utilizing those sorts of business processing outsourcing organizations, and obviously they are an integral part of their organization. What's your sort of top tip then to those businesses who almost have, will treat these organizations and treat these staff almost as their own, but they are under a sort of contractual obligation, and they're really sort of worried about that? Just before we go to that, just a reminder, anyone has any additional questions, please feel free, send them in and I can put them to the panelists. Rohit, sorry.
I think this is a time to test the partnership both in practicality and in the spirit. So I would say that, be as transparent as possible with your partner suppliers in India, and try and see that are they also reacting and they responding in a similar manner. And it's important to have a trust and confidence from both the side, but at the same time, have your plan B always in place. And that's why it's important to make sure that you also have a parallel channel of, the finding what is going on the ground in India and also in your partner's business, so that you are well informed in managing those relationships.
Fantastic. We've had a question come in from Vasant, who's asking about sort of the key sectors. So which sectors, maybe we start off Rohit on this one and then go to Deepmala. Which sectors do you think will sort of be almost the first to come out of this lockdown and start to see the growth initially?
See, I would say that all the sectors which are consumer consumption driven sector. So whether you talk about the the healthcare, the food and drinks, and the services sectors, these are the sectors, they will first they come out from this. And the fact that the manufacturing and all the industries from this lockdown 4 are now allowed to operate, and various the grants and the incentives have been come out from Government of India under the economic reform package. I expect that manufacturing also to be the ramped up and the expedited in the coming days, also because of the new interests of the the investments coming from the China and the other countries. So those inquiries will also help in the boosting the manufacturing and the other contractors driven the arrangements in India.
Deepmala or Samriti, anything you wanted to add?
So Chris, I agree a lot with what Rohit has said from the sector point of view. And if I was to look at manufacturing, I do estimate pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical life sciences and also chemicals bouncing back faster. My estimate is also that, and this is only just that feeling, that manufacturing other than these two sectors are going to be a slightly slow resilience coming back, highly driven on contractual labor, for example. Like if we look at apparel industry, and manufacturing of apparel is the biggest and the most slowest comeback. But yet, amongst manufacturing, I also feel pharmaceuticals and chemical processing industries are going to bounce back faster.
And what I feel is the consumer goods industry and the retail sectors would have very good business in the coming months. And the reason which I feel personally is because from last 3 months, people have been tied up in the houses and they have not go out and do any retail shopping or any, retail therapy has not been there. So people will come out in vengeance and start buying stuff. This is what my personal opinion is about this.
Yeah, I think we obviously had a big announcement yesterday in the UK that retail will open on the 15th of June, and some retail is already opening from the 1st of June. And then there's also some interesting announcements this morning from Greece and Spain, who have opened up their tourism industries. Spain will require no quarantine period, which is obviously good news for people who are traveling there during the summer. We've got a final question that's come in, and again, it sort of links back to that sort of business process outsourcing and staffing. Given that obviously so many people are now having to work from home, are you seeing a lot of the companies having to provide technology to those workers who are now having to operate from those remote locations? Obviously laptops, internet, etc. might not, all staff might not have access to those at home. So maybe Samriti, obviously as part of that recruitment process, are you seeing that the provision is being put in place for organizations to be able to provide this kit to the workforce?
To tell you the truth, like in our organization in MNV, we had actually started preparing for work from home at the second week of March. And how it came into, the idea came into being was that at that time, the government was putting the whole office into quarantine if one employee is detected with COVID-19. So the only way out of it was to prepare ourselves that if that scenario comes in, how do we sit at home and work so that the work is not compromised. Now, what I have seen in my peers and in my colleagues and in my network, that in India, people are right now self-sufficient to work from home. And most of the MNCs, they were already equipped with the laptops, with the hardware, with the tools, with the softwares, because these people are usually very flexible working from home or from outside the office. So of course there is a scope because people have suddenly woken up to these kind of situations. But I think more or less Indian population was prepared. Most of the business class and the employees have been self-sufficient in this regard.
Chris, if I may come on this.
Yeah.
I agree with Samriti on this, and also I would like to say that because these days a lot of companies have moved into the cloud-based the working environment. So not necessarily if the the office provided, the IT infrastructure, if the staff are, the having, then only they can, the work. In some cases, even the staff, if they don't have the company provided IT infrastructure, but they have their personal laptops and all, through this cloud-based, the working environment, they can do the login and, they can, the operate. So which comes to the point that, yes, the role of, the cyber security and, anything, related to data security part, that have become more important, and the companies have started looking into that, that how they can make that, the more effective and foolproof.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and we've got an up and coming webinar actually looking at that, as so many more people are working from home. How do businesses ensure the security and integrity of that data? There was a large data breach here in the UK last week, where thousands of personal details were stolen. So I think businesses have to obviously be mindful of that. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so apologies if I was unable to answer your question. We will try to get back to you with those questions that we haven't managed to get to. So I think finally, it's sort of a huge thank you from me to Deepmala, to Rohit and Samriti for your time, and a huge thank you to everybody for attending this webinar. Take care, and most importantly, everybody, stay safe. Thanks very much.
Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.